Greetings, Salem and Kaiser, and welcome to a new kind of enlightenment. Yes, it's a very sunny day out there. We're sweating like demons, but we're going to go into a different territory today. We're going to discuss an age-old question, the tale of two generations, the younger one and the older one. I guess I fit into the older one, sort of. And we're going to find out, why is there so much division, divisiveness? We talk about, more prominent is dealing with ethnic divisiveness and religious and racial and even gender divisiveness. But beneath the surface of all of this, we have different generations, and they don't always see eye to eye. So we're going to find out what we can do today, and you probably are welcome to write in your suggestions to myself, B. Lee Coyne, C-O-Y-N-E, care of CCTV, 575 Trade Street, Southeast, and this is Salem, Oregon, 97301. I bet you know that one by heart. Anyway, I'd like to introduce our special panel today. Today's an all-male panel, but that's okay. On this side, we have
I'm Dakota Parmley.
Dakota Parmley, and he hails from Silverton. Where were you born, Dakota?
I was born in Independence, Missouri.
Hey, that's where Truman started growing up way back when. And Alan, go ahead.
Alan Holland. I'm from West Salem now. I was born in Central Oregon, Prineville actually, went through school in Redmond.
They have a nice reservoir out there. They go fishing there?
I have fished most of the lakes around Central Oregon, including Prineville Reservoir.
And did I catch something?
Oh, yeah, I haven't been fishing for a
Not for
long
a
time,
while.
but there's still
Okay.
fish there.
In a few years, our friend Dakota will be fishing for something different, like girlfriend maybe. But he's not. Are you not mowed yet, right?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, something for the future. Anyway, I want to start by asking about some of the names that older people are called and younger people are called, stereotypic names that are really put downs to people. Let's start with Alan. What are some of the names that you hear older people?
I hear people talked about as gray hairs,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
just old folks,
Geezers, which is
geezers. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
old geezers especially.
right. Yeah.
There's a lot of semi-disparaging or remarks of that sort that occasionally, people express.
And what are some of the terms of disrespect that are thrown in the laps of young people by the older generation?
There's like, you young punks,
Mm-hmm.
kind of, brats, kind of,
Right, correct.
I hear old people referring to young folks as kids well into their 30s and 40s. And that in itself can be a diminutive or a disparaging term in a way if a person feels like they're a mature adult and yet they're still referred to as kids. It kind of belittles them.
Originally, the word of kids referred to baby goats, and we as humans kind of preempted it from them. And the goats apparently haven't organized to fight us on that particular thing. Not yet. Maybe they would butt us in the butt or something like that. Who knows? But anyway, Alan, what are some of the reasons that you think that older people who once young have forgotten the innocence and the sensitivity of their childhood and tend to sometimes look down on so-called younger people? What do you think is behind it?
It would be difficult for me to generalize about everybody, but
Yeah,
I
with some
think that
people.
in my personal experience, life has changed dramatically in the last 40, 50 years. And as I was growing up, it was common for kids, young folks, to have a job of some sort. From almost as early as I can remember, before I was 10 or 12, I was doing something to make money and to earn my way. Mowing lawns, pulling weeds, helping out neighbors or relatives in whatever way we can in order to make ends meet and to have spending money for ourselves. Sometimes it'd be for school clothes, sometimes it'd pay for going to a swimming pool or having a special thing or whatever.
You can't depend on allowance alone.
It's so developing a sense of responsibility to help out I called it nest building in a way. And same thing is related to picking up after yourself and doing housework and helping out with the family responsibilities. And I've got a sense that the pressure to do that on kids is lessened today than it used to be. It's, I think our sense of commitment and work ethic is somewhat lessened because of our overall social situation that I think parents sometimes feel less less drive to do that.
Let's let Dakota weigh in. What do you think about young people being less engaged in work ethics and seeking jobs after school and all, and I guess more into fun and those kind of activities?
I definitely feel that's true for a lot of kids because I think there's so many distractions now. Like, you know, they have their phones, they have their games, and so, like, we spend a lot of time on those instead of wanting to go out there. And it's also a lot of the parents now give their kids money, and it's kind of, they don't make them work for it at all. And so our work ethic has diminished since, you know.
Interesting. By the way, in case your audience out there have to be curious, Dakota is 15 years old. You attend what school?
Silverton High School.
Silverton High School. And you no longer attend school, but you are a one-time teacher who taught at what school?
Well, I taught at a couple different schools. At first 8 years at the University of Oregon for a GD program for 17 to 22-year-olds. But then the last 22
GD
years,
stands for?
General Educational Development. It's a high school equivalency.
Okay, we just might
test.
make sure everybody out there knows.
So those 8 years, and then 22 years after that in middle school in McMinnville. Math, science.
Good. Okay. Just to let you guys know where we're coming from. I'm a retired journalist. Worked in New York and in Washington, D.C. area, and then ultimately in a place called Roswell, New Mexico. Then we alienated all the aliens, and I was forced to flee to good old Oregon, and that's why I'm here. Joke, joke. Anyway, I would like to ask about some of the areas where there is misconception and division, and I'll start with Dakota. What are some of the false ideas and myths that younger people have that all older people have, blah, blah, blah? What are some of the things you've heard in your
I feel like
experience?
we generalize older people as kind of, you know, those old people who don't care about us, you know. And I feel like a lot of it comes from, we feel like they're not as technologically capable. And so we kind of
Low tech, baby.
and so we feel like that's something that we should put them down for. They're like, oh, they don't know how to use it. They don't know how to use an iPhone. So, you know, we call them, you know.
No iPad or iPhone or
Yeah.
an eye for an iPad and a tooth for a toothpad. No. What are your thoughts about the way the generations characterize each other?
I agree to a good extent. I think that it is incumbent upon us as citizens to try to be able to stay competent to communicate with other people in the normal ways that communication happens. And frankly, technology has advanced so fast, it's very difficult to keep up with it. I mean, a person 15 years ago, I was on the cutting edge of technology teaching how to use computers. And in 15 years, it's dramatically changed.
Of course.
So it's hard to keep up with it. But that doesn't mean there aren't older folks who are completely technologically savvy and capable. It's just that maybe on the average it's less than it is among younger folks.
Okay. I'm going to add a piece. Back in the 1940s and 50s, when I was growing up in Brooklyn and Queens, New York, but it's probably true all over the country, days of trolley tracks and having people deliver milk in milk boxes and leaving notes at the door. Anyway, the extended family was really close. I happened to have lived with my grandparents for the first 4 or 5 years of my life, and then later on lived next to a house in East Flatbush owned by my other set of grandparents, so I was close to them. And in these days, you have two factors that leave kids very much on their own. I'm saying kids not in a negative way, but young people. Number one, grandparents are not part of the picture because they often live in different parts of the state or the country, and you don't see them on a regular basis. How far do your grandparents live from you?
Well, there's two different sets of grandparents I
Okay,
have, but
well, mention both.
well, the furthest away they live in Idaho.
That's fairly far,
Um,
not commuting distance.
yeah, the closest lives 5 minutes away, but
Okay, good. And when you were growing up, Alan, how close did you live to your grandparents?
I've never met either part of my grandparents, either
Sure.
any of my grandparents.
So
My
we're
mother
not-
was an English immigrant after World War II, and her parents were in England. My father was orphaned as a child, and so I never met
So
them.
not relevant to you.
But interestingly, I have grandchildren living with us now in our
Right.
home.
What is it like?
There are many stresses and there's many joys.
Okay.
It's
Mention just a few.
well,
Enlighten us.
it's difficult. You've got to learn to accommodate little kids in a house that hasn't had little kids living in it for a long time, and that means some adjustments of placement of things. It means keeping the kids supervised carefully, and it means having some patience about accepting the fact that some kids are going to spill and some kids are going to do this or that with something and it'll get lost or broken, or and you got to go with the flow with that to an extent.
Exactly.
And support the mom, our daughter, in her efforts to do that, but acknowledging that she's the primary caregiver. And
How old are the grandchildren?
the grandchildren living with us now are 2 and 4.
That is really quite
That's young, and
They do need oversight supervision.
it's been about 6 months or so, and it's probably going to be temporary. In the next few months, they'll move to their own house, I think. But it's a mixed bag of joy and stress. But by and large, I say it's been a real wonderful thing to be part of their young lives, which are so temporary when they're small. You don't want to miss that. And so I feel fortunate to be able to have them with us.
And they relate to you in a loving way, different than most grandparents get related to differently than parents, because you're not exactly a power figure, even
Right.
if you live with them. Right.
Yeah.
The grandparents who live close to you, Dakota, what's your relationship with them, and what kind of things do you do together?
well, it's just my grandma, but we will go out and we'll have dinners with each other. Every Wednesday night there's a free dinner that we have. We try and go as often as possible, and we talk about how our lives are. She likes to know what's going on in my life, and
Do you get some reports about the good old days, about what life was like when she grew up and things like that, or do you get to see photo albums of way back when?
Well, I have seen a couple interesting photos of her. Apparently, she used to be like a sharpshooter or something. I don't know.
Annie Oakley II. Woo-hoo.
Oh,
So-
cool.
So yeah, it's interesting to get to talk to.
Do you know the story of how she met her husband?
I do not.
Good information to pump out of her. If you
Yeah.
can. Be interesting thing. Find out her strategy, what she used for bait. Okay. I know. A little frivolous at times, but that's okay.
No, that's a good
The
one.
audience out there probably kind of likes to smile every so often. Anyway, I wanted to ask if you have any thoughts. I'm going to pose a what-if question, and I think we'll start with Alan. What would you do if you were in charge of a senior center, a pilot project, and they wanted to have a kind of a seminar or forum on ways of learning to respect and understand the younger generation? Where would you begin? What kind of training or retraining do older people need to reevaluate where they're coming from and be a little bit more open-minded generally, and not to think that age represents privilege, and because we've been on this planet a little bit longer that we know all the answers, because that often backfires a lot.
I don't know. I think I'd probably want to refresh or to cover in some respect some of the requirements and stresses that young folks are under now, particularly in school. And
Dakota's an expert in that.
Well, there's been a lot of attention given to education reform and testing, maybe more than is appropriate, and maybe, we could talk a lot about how that is happening and whether it's right or not. But the reality is that kids are getting a lot of tests in schools.
True.
And there's pressure on that. And what are the requirements? What are the expectations? Would be something that I think older folks should be apprised of to an extent, so that they know what is being done in the schools and where it's going and what pressures they're under.
How about learning a little bit about what gives kids enjoyment,
Yes,
entertainment, so that it isn't just academic driven?
I think that would be valuable
Like
too.
video games are a big thing in their generation, not for us.
It is. Well, I don't even own a PlayStation or Xbox, but I know what
If
they
you give
are.
us a little,
I know what they are, and I know that kids can
Intro to
benefit
that.
from that entertainment a lot. So I think that some exposure to that would be good too. Sure.
yeah. Do you have video games at home?
Yeah, I play on my computer a lot.
And is that something that the older generation doesn't really know about that much? We're not tuned into that.
I'm sure they know about it. I'm just not sure it's their thing.
Hmm.
But
Should we give them training on how to?
if they want,
So they don't play Canasta and Old Maid on their computers or whatever. Okay. So what if you were the principal of a school, that Dakota, that was involved, let's say, in a test program on how to have young people get more tuned into what's going on with the older generation, how would you approach that, or where would you start?
well, I feel like it's good to start with understanding that things are different now than they were then.
Mm-hmm.
So you not only do you have this age gap, but you have an experience gap.
Mm-hmm.
So we grew up with different things than they did, and so it's important to realize that there's always going to be kind of some, gap in what they know, kind of, because kids now grow up with iPads in their hands, so
They do.
I think that's an important place to start,
Mm-hmm.
realizing that things are different, and then from there, just kind of it's a lot about respect. I feel, because you respect people in general, and I feel like most of the kids I'm around don't respect the older generation, just because of the technological gap that we have, kind of.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'd like to comment about
Yes.
that a little bit.
Yes, Alan.
One of the major stumbling blocks to being successful in school when I was teaching 12 years ago, and I suspect that it's probably somewhat there today, is a result of not feeling an urgency to learn or to memorize certain things. That as we were growing up, I was told, you're not going to go to the 5th grade unless you know your multiplication facts, boom, 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 and you're not just going. That's our expectation, and 4th graders all did that, or at least supposedly. Today, I would have 6th graders who've never really memorized their multiplication facts because they don't need to. They got a calculator, or access to information is so ready, is so easy, that the motive and the drive to want to commit a lot of things to memory seems to be less important. And that, I think, is troubling to some older folks, because we don't trust technology as much as I think young folks do. Because someday technology will go away, or someday you're going to be in a situation where you don't have that access and you want to be autonomous without your pad. So,
What would you like to delete from your life if you lived it over again? Push the delete button, and that experience would just disappear.
well, that would be a couple experiences I had when I got beat up and bullied.
Okay.
But that doesn't have to do with technology.
I know, but I'm just juxtaposing a fancy word I once learned. Okay. I'd like to find out a little bit about, back in the 1970s, I think it was 72, Eagle magazine out of Wisconsin, probably Milwaukee, had an article called Project Emeritus, and it was an intergenerational project proposal. Basically what it said is that retired people can be recycled and they have the knowledge and the wisdom, the experience of having worked in 2, 3, 4 places at that point. And maybe that information could be useful to the younger generation beyond just reading a brochure handed out by a guidance counselor and saying, you know, hey, you ask the question to the person, maybe they would go on a field trip. And for the older person, probably, it would give them a sense of renewed meaning, you know, that they're just because they've retired, they're not all washed up. And I would think to the younger generation, they would feel honored that somebody cares enough about them to come into the classroom and share sort of a grown-up show and tell. Mm-hmm. What would your thoughts be about that, Dakota, if you had a program at your school that allowed or encouraged retired people to come in and chat a little bit about their old jobs and maybe even take you on field trips to the places they worked?
I mean, I feel like I would find it fascinating, but I feel like a lot of the kids nowadays would be kind of bored with it because sadly it's not something that we care a lot about as a generalization.
Is the future?
Yeah, it's, you know, I feel like the kids don't value the stories that people have to share. We'd rather, you know, watch a movie or something and have a story that way. Yeah. And so
and how do younger people, that is, how do younger people plan their future? They just let it fall into place, happenstance. Is that what we're saying?
Sometimes that's true. A lot of, you know, as you said, the information is so readily available that some of the kids do take it in their own hands and they, you know, will look it up and they do try to plan their future. But there is a lot out there now that kids just don't have the drive because they feel like they don't need to memorize the facts and they don't need to get ready for their future whenever they go out in the world and they don't have an iPad or an iPhone. So.
Well, I know that the Salem-Keizer School District now has a new superintendent. I think her name is Superintendent Perry. Was it Chris Perry or something like that? She used to work in Dallas, and she just took over for Sandy Husk. So, Chris Perry, your staff, if you're listening, let's consider the possibility of teaming up, let's say, with the Center 50 Plus or the other senior centers in town. The one on Cherry Avenue is the Senior Keizer, Salem, and see if we could kind of try out a pilot program and see to what degree retired folks, even if it's once or twice a year, could make an imprint on the younger generation and lead field trips and give show and tell and all. And if you need some resources, I'd be happy to supply you because I have a copy of that Project Emeritus article out of Eagle Magazine, and maybe we could become a leader in the state, if not the country, in doing some more vocational education training so that the options for young people like Dakota and his friends and a few of his enemies might even benefit. Comments?
There's an interesting change in education that has happened, transpired over the last number of years, and part of it in our economy. Part of it is based upon this rapid change of technology that I was referring to, and that changes the workplace as well because what is being produced and how it's being done is different than it used to be. We're less in a situation where the first 12 years of school is preparing us for a career than we are preparing us for how to work and how to learn and how to apply those things. But a career is not something that very many people that are young today are going to have for 20, 30, 40 years. There'll be a few, but mostly I think that people are going to have to learn, how to access information and how to apply it and how to solve problems, but mostly how to get to work on time and how to relate to other people in an amiable,
and how to
pleasant way.
communicate without texting.
Well, all kinds of communication and
Although
cooperation.
emails and office situations are now very prevalent, really.
The career choice idea is something that I think our youth shouldn't take lightly and need to prepare themselves for the future in a kind of a generic way, but I think it's important that they have a context or a field, a career parameter of some sort that they are emphasizing in their preparation so that they can work within that field that they like and they're comfortable with, but at the same time prepared to take a job that they just have to earn money to make things happen for a while at least. and still get along with people
Okay.
in the process.
Yeah. Many moons ago, I remember 2 field trips we took from my public school in Brooklyn. The first was to a fire station, and what I was impressed about it is both climbing on the fire truck and seeing all the fancy equipment it had. And also, I love to see the sliding pole where the firefighters came from upstairs and gung, 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 and down the sliding pole and off into the fire truck to fight that fire and crush that blaze. That was kind of fun. The other was a place probably out of existence now called Rankin's Dairy, and they showed us how the milk came in and how it was homogenized, mixed together and all. And just like any dairy factory, I know the Tillamook people, they have an ice cream factory, and that's kind of fun. And people could go there and learn how ice cream is made, and maybe some of them will become ice cream connoisseurs or whatever. Yeah, we have a lot of vineyards. You yourself have been associated with vineyards, and I think it would be kind of fun to learn about the vineyard area.
Yeah, there are many, many places that can be visited, job sites, if you will, or production sites. So sure, it's part of what I think is a good idea, so people can see if they want to be part of that in the future.
Okay.
That's how decisions get made about where you're going. Sure.
Okay. Now, I think we're going to close in a few minutes, so I'm going to ask for some closing thoughts. What would you like to see happen in the future to get better communications going between young and old people and trying to narrow those stereotypes that we have of each other? Let's start with Dakota this time.
In the future, I really do feel like it's a lot about teaching respect and really having experience, because I feel like we're removed from, the older generation, and we don't get a lot of, contact or talk to them that much.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like if we were around them more, people would be more interested in the stories that they have to tell.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that's something I'd like to see in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So
Maybe Christmas week and spring break could be a time for the reunion of older people and younger people. Maybe the senior centers could have an open day and invite young people and have different themes for the entire week, that if you're interested in this or that or whatever. Maybe you guys might like to learn some of the old dances from the 40s and 50s. That could be a fun thing. See, tap dancing is not so much in vogue anymore, so those are just some of the things that would be indicated, kind of in vogue. Alan, your thoughts?
I would like to see and encourage more opportunities for age diversities to meet together.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to see churches and congregations bring young people into their congregation, into their groups, with activities that they can relate to, things that are fun, things that are engaging, things that bring older and younger folks together in various different ways that are enjoyable. And I'd like to encourage mature folks to go to coffee shops and to go to movies and places where there's discussion. The Progressive Film Series is marvelous in terms of opportunities to talk about issues of current importance. There's lots of places where people can meet, and I think familiarity breeds good things in relations.
I agree.
So anything that where people can get together is good.
I agree. So let's have the schools and the senior centers and the Boys and Girls Club and the Scouts and the others try to encourage more intergenerational things going. And I'd like you, the viewers over there, to write into us, Lee Coyne, C-O-Y-N-E, care of CCTV, and you know the address, 575 Trade Street, Southeast, Salem 97301. So this is Lee signing off and wishing you a great week ahead, and may you not have a meltdown. Take care. Bye for now.